This summer will define the next generation of anime. In July, we're getting Season 2 of Dandadan, the biggest anime of 2024. And we're getting Season 1 of Gachi Akuta, the spiritual successor of Fire Force and one of the biggest ongoing manga. The reason this summer will be so important is because this is exactly what we saw in the summer of 2019. Summer is always a big season for anime, but 2019 was especially big with the later end of Demon Slayer, Dr. Stone, Vinland Saga, and Fire Force. Not only is that still the best season of anime we've had in years, but with Demon Slayer episode 19, it became one of the defining moments in anime. But considering the lineup we have this year, it's pretty clear that 2025 is going to be even better. That's why in this video, I'd like to talk about the summer 2025 lineup, discuss why it's going to be a must-watch season even if you're only a casual anime fan, and explain why this will go down as the most important season in anime for at least the next 5 years. So first, let's talk about the headliners for this summer. There's a bunch of shows to look out for. Call of the Night Season 2, Shield Hero Season 4, and if you're like me and you love dumpster fires, then you'll be watching Rent-a-Girlfriend. There's also Sakamoto Days, which will get plenty of views, but after part 1 has kind of died down a bit. That leaves us with Kaiju number 8 Season 2, Dandadan Season 2, and Gachi Akuta. Now I include Kaiju number 8 in this list simply because it's just that popular. The first season got a bunch of hype prior to the first episode. The anime overall is pretty good in terms of adaptation, even though it got a slightly less than hype reception. But Season 2 is the second most anticipated summer anime on MAL, and the number 1 anime on LiveChart. Plus the manga is consistently in the top 10, usually top 5, most read manga on Manga Plus, the official site for all of the Shueisha manga. So the manga is still insanely popular and the anime is just as popular, meaning even though it's a second season and it's not the most influential series, it's going to be one of the most watched shows regardless of what anyone thinks of it. Now next we gotta talk about Dandadan Season 2. And I say that because everyone is talking about Dandadan months after the first season ended. It's crazy to talk about because many manga fans, myself included, only expected a small reaction considering the manga had a small fan base for years. But despite leaked episodes and despite literal cancer, Dandadan became an overnight success. The OP is still one of the most viewed videos on YouTube. It was one of the most watched shows on Netflix and Crunchyroll, and everyone loved it. I mean, what's not to love? It's got romance, action, horror, aliens, balls, plus it's got the unparalleled animation of Science Saru. So considering the amazing characters, insane plot, gorgeous animation, and instantly iconic opening, Dandadan had all the makings of an overnight success. Since then, the manga sales have gone up like crazy. Discussion surrounding both the anime and manga has skyrocketed. There's no question that this anime made Dandadan one of the most talked about series on the internet, which is why Season 2 is going to be so important. But that just leaves us with the new anime Gachi Akuta, a series that you probably know barely anything about besides some god-tier memes. But trust me when I tell you that it has all of the makings of an instant classic. So much so that it's probably going to be bigger than Demon Slayer and Dandadan. But real quick before I get into that, make sure to become a channel member if you're enjoying the video. You'll get custom emojis and badges that you can show off in our weekly live streams, and you can pick which series I cover next. Now, if you haven't heard of Gachi Akuta, it's a battle series out of Weekly Shonen Magazine by Kei Urana, who worked as an assistant to Okubo on Fire Force and has clearly inherited his style of storytelling and art with her own sense of personality. The story follows Rudo as he's cast out from society into the wastelands. He joins up with the group known as the Cleaners, where he gains the power to animate objects he controls, uses those powers to fight the mysterious raiders, and works to escape the abyss so he can find out what really happened to him. Now, on top of having an incredible story, amazing characters, and gorgeous art, This anime has a few other things going for it. First of all, it's the spiritual successor of Fire Force, one of Weekly Shonen Magazine's biggest series in years and one of the biggest anime since 2019. Like I mentioned before, it's drawn and written by Kei Urana. So on top of all of the fans currently following the manga, you also have all of the Fire Force fans who don't read the manga that will probably check out the anime. Plus, you have the fact that the anime is being done by Studio Bones. Technically, it's being done by Bones Film, but that's just their new legal name. Bones has been one of the best studios in anime for, I don't know, like 20 years. They did Full Metal Alchemist and Brotherhood, Soul Eater, Space Dandy, Noragami, Mob Psycho 100, Bungo Stray Dogs, and of course, My Hero Academia. Needless to say, the anime is being handled by one of the biggest studios that has some of the best anime in the last 20 years. Granted, My Hero isn't the most consistent anime in terms of quality, but Bones managed to carry it to its current level of insane popularity despite those inconsistencies. It is worth noting that Gachi Akuta is currently being directed by Fumihiko Suganuma, someone who really hasn't directed their own show before but has done key animation, storyboards, and directing for episodes of Angel Beats, Charlotte, and Dragon Quest, all of which are gorgeous anime. You also have Satoshi Ishino as the animation director, who did a bunch of work on Full Metal Alchemist. The series composition will be done by Hiroshi Seko, who also did the series composition for Mob Psycho 100, Chainsaw Man, and a little show called Jujutsu Kaisen. Needless to say, Gachi Akuta is in good hands with Bones. Finally, and this is something that people aren't really talking about yet, but Gachi Akuta is kind of the Soul Eater remake we've always wanted. I made a video a few months ago talking about a Soul Eater remake and who could do it, and one of those studios is obviously Bones. But even assuming Bones never touches Soul Eater again, this is kind of better in a way. A lot of Soul Eater fans hopped on the Fire Force hype train, and a lot of those fans became Gachi Akuta fans. So 20 years later, with Bones handling the manga created by Okubo's assistant, and with Gachi Akuta being so much like Fire Force and Soul Eater, this is as close to the Soul Eater remake as we're probably going to get. Instead of remaking an older anime, Bones is animating a new manga that a lot of those same fans are currently reading. So like I said before, summer 2019 was huge. It had the later half of Demon Slayer, which to this day is still one of the biggest moments in anime, as it paved the way for even bigger moments like the first Demon Slayer movie that set all kinds of records, as well as the second season that would be even more popular. It had Dr. Stone, which had a ton of fans during season 1, and is still going strong 3 seasons later. It had Fire Force, which was met with mixed reviews, but is still insanely popular, and like Dr. Stone, had one of the most trending openings ever, really. On top of that, you had the debut of Vinland Saga, which ran into some issues because it was locked behind Amazon Prime, but was still successful. And to top it off, you had the second half of the Fruits Basket remake's first season, and the final season of Fairy Tail was entering its final episodes. Clearly, there was a ton going on in a season of anime that is already popular to begin with, but it launched a bunch of new series, is still one of the most consistent seasons, and launched Demon Slayer to levels of popularity that created an entire new generation of anime fans. There have been a lot of great anime seasons besides this one, and there are shows that are arguably more influential, like the first season of My Hero Academia back in 2016. But there's almost nothing that has both a massively important show as well as such a long list of other amazing shows. That's why summer 2019 is still one of the biggest seasons in anime. So the question now is, why will summer 2025 be even bigger? Well, first of all, I think season 2 of Dandadan is going to be just as big, if not bigger, than season 1. Season 1 ended on a huge cliffhanger, so everyone who finished season 1 is dying to to see the next episode. On top of that, the current arc is really Dandadan's first big arc. Gigi gets all kinds of crazy powers, there's a crazy new monster, and there's a ton of big fights. Combine that with the insane animation of Science Saru, and it's basically a guaranteed formula for views. On top of that, the story continues to flesh out the dynamic between Okarun and Momo. So considering the romance in Dandadan is still one of the most talked about topics in anime, there's no question that this will continue to be the case in season 2. So that's Dandadan. In terms of Gachi Akuta, I pretty much think it's going to be Bones' next big anime after My Hero. My Hero came out back in 2016. Since then, it's been one of the most viewed, most talked about, and most profitable anime in the industry with 8 seasons, a bunch of movies, and a buttload of merchandise. The simple reason being that it was a great manga handled by one of the biggest studios, plus it had all of the elements of a mainstream success. It had action, it had superheroes, and it even had some romance. So why do I think Gachi Akuta will be just as big? Well, like we talked about, it's Bones, and it's the spiritual successor of Fire Force, and it's basically the closest thing to a Soul Eater remake. It might not get a bunch of movies like My Hero, but it's got just as much potential to be an overnight success. In fact, if you look at the trailer on YouTube, it's already got over 1 million views, which places it in the same tier as Fire Force Season 3. So considering this new anime already has a ton of hype, on top of the fact that it's one of the biggest ongoing manga, and the fact that it's being animated by Bones, there's no doubt in my mind that Gachi Akuta has everything it needs to be one of the most important anime in years. It's regularly talked about as one of the best manga out of the current generation, and it's safe to assume that this will be true for the anime as well. So between Dandadan, Gachi Akuta, Kaiju number 8, Sakamoto Days, and more, this season is going to be a must-watch season for every anime fan. Not only is it full of great anime, but it's probably going to be a season that everyone talks about for the next 10 years. But what do you think? Which anime are you looking forward to? How do you think this will change the anime community? Share your thoughts and see what everyone else has to say down in the comments. I'll pick my favorite and share it as comment of the week on my community tab. Also, don't forget to become a channel member. You get custom emojis and badges for the live streams, you can pick which series I cover next, and you can even get credited in future videos. Also, check out my other anime discussions, which you can find in the playlist linked right here. Until then, thank you for watching, and I hope to hear from you soon.